Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Yellow Darkness video, where today we're going to be completing the game with the duo of Carvanha and Numel. Now, these are two Pokemon that are used by Team Magma and Aqua quite a lot in the Gen 3 games, and you find these Pokemon quite a lot in this game as well, but I've never really used these Pokemon too much, so it is going to be interesting to see how they do, and especially how they pair together. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. And for base stats, Carvanha has 45 HP, 90 attack, 20 defense, 65 special attacks, 20 special defense, and 65 speed. And Numel has 60 HP, 60 attack, 40 defense, 65 special attack, 45 special defense, and 35 speed. Carvanha doesn't get any water type moves through level up, which is really unfortunate, so I am going to have to go early on to try to get Water Pulse. Ice Beam's always good, and Dark Coverage is always nice. And Numel gets access to both Fire and Ground Stab, which is nice, and gets Earthquake at level 37, which is fairly early on. Rock Slide, as always, I say is probably the best move in the game, so I think that they are going to do incredibly well. I'm just a little afraid that Carvanha's frailty is going to be an issue. Anyway, moving on to our Carvanha in particular, it has a lax nature, raising its defense and lowering its special defense, which isn't great, but both of its defenses are lacking anyway, so it probably doesn't make that much of a difference. It gets the Rough Skin ability, which makes any contact moves deal damage to the attacker, which could come in handy, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Bite, Leer, and Rage by level 10. Moving on to our Numel, it has a Hardy nature, which is a neutral nature, so that's alright. It has the Oblivious ability, making it immune to all attraction, which is nice for Laverna, and according to Bulbapedia, gets Tackle and Growl by level 10. So with that, let's go ahead and move into the game, and the first thing we're going to do is run into another Numel. Goodbye, other Numel. And soon after, Numel learns Ember, and then we move on to the battle against the old man. And as you can see, I'm only at level 11, so I was actually able to get through this early area pretty quickly, which gives me hope that this is actually going to be a really quick run. Tackle into the Horsey, doing very little damage. Bite takes it down though. Then another tackle into the Shroomish. Now it does have Effect Spore, so it might just be able to poison me or something, or paralyze in this case. But I'm able to take it down pretty easily. And I move right along to the Power Rangers. I decide to take on Brown just because I know I do super effective damage against the Baltoy, and Hoot Hoot isn't really that scary. But Carvanha actually goes down in a single hit to Shadow Rush, and I do very little damage with Ember. So maybe I got a little ahead of myself, and unfortunately this is their first loss. But I think that with a little bit of training from Mount Battle, it should be good. And I get to the leader of Area 2, which I do want to get the Water Pulse TM, but as you can see, Numel's taken down in a single hit, and Carvanha doesn't really take hits too well. So even though I do think it's possible, it's not likely, and I take myself down with confusion. But anyway, with those extra levels, I should be able to take down Brown. So let's begin the rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. And the 1-year anniversary of this channel is coming up, so if you have any ideas on what I should do, put them down below. Maybe I'll just watch the first video again, maybe I'll just kind of do a synopsis of the channel overall. Anyway, moving on, I run into another Numel, and I catch this one. And as you'll see, I'm now using that Numel. And I'll get to why in just a moment, because that's not the only Pokemon we're about to replace. No, unfortunately, I think that it's worthwhile also to replace our Carvanha as well. And that's because I don't think that we can actually beat Area 2 of Mount Battle. And that's because Numel is extremely weak to water, and of course Carvanha is quite frail. So instead, I decide to catch this Carvanha, which also has a lax nature, and this Numel has a quirky nature, which is neutral as well, so none of the natures really changed. It's just that this Carvanha gets Water Pulse, and this Numel gets Dig, which is very helpful because even though it's going to get Magnitude at level 19, Magnitude doesn't work well in doubles unless I have Protect. Anyway, moving on to the battle against Laverna, she leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly. I use Ember into the Beautifly and Bite into the Love Disc. Even with a crit, it only does about half of Love Disc's health, and Beautifly is taken down to about the same. Water Gun takes down Carvana, and Gus takes down Nummel. Okay, well that's not a great start. At level 22, Carvana gets Crunch, and on the 5th attempt, we go back into it once again, and the main reason that I needed so many attempts was the fact that Love Disc is very fast and hits Nummel for a ton of damage with Water Gun. Then out comes Roselia, dig into it, which because it's half poison is neutral. Crunch to finish it off, and then she brings out her final Pokemon, which is Delcatty. And if Delcatty uses Shadow Rush into Carvana, it's taken down in a single hit. However, if it goes for Shadow Wave, we should both survive. I go for Bite here, hoping for a flinch. Don't get it. Shadow Rush takes Nummel down to 25 health. Ember and Bite take it down pretty low. Unfortunately, Nummel went down, but another Bite finishes it off. And of course, you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video without the obligatory Mirabee. How are you doing today, Mirabee? Always good to see you. Anyway, I run into another Carvana. Goodbye, other Carvana. And at the Real Game Tower, I pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect. And I don't actually ever teach Hidden Power this run, just because I don't think they really need it. And at level 30, Carvana evolves into Sharpedo, which is definitely a huge upgrade. And of course, with an evolution means new stats. Sharpedo has 70 HP, 120 attack, 40 defense, 95 special attack, 40 special defense, and 95 speed. So it's very fast and very strong. Unfortunately, it's also very frail and can't really make use of that 120 base attack with its two stab types. So it's not going to be as strong as it could be, but it still should be pretty good. I teach it Ice Beam over Refresh, and then I run into another Carvana. Goodbye, the Carvana. Soon after, Nummel evolves into Camerupt, which is also a much needed evolution, and it also gets the move Rock Slide at this level, which I'm going to teach right away over Takedown. So with that, also comes with new stats. Camerupt has 70 HP, 100 attack, 70 defense, 105 special attack, 75 special defense, and 40 speed. So it's quite a bit stronger, a little bit tankier, and is a little faster. But overall, I think it's a good evolution. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the battle against Snaddle. He leads with a Quagsire and a Lantern. I go for Crunch into the Lantern, which does over half health, and Rock Slide misses Lantern, unfortunately. Shockwave takes Sharpedo down to 29 HP, and I take down the Lantern and do another Rock Slide, just so I can hopefully flinch the Quagsire so I don't end up losing more speed. Unfortunately, I don't. Go for Crunch and Ember into the Lunatone, which Crunch is able to take it down in a single hit. Out comes Cast Form, which takes an Ember down to half. Rock Tomb hits again. Now I am a little afraid that Quagsire is going to start attacking, so I decide to go for Dig just to be safe. Out comes his final Pokemon, Metang. Go for Crunch to take down the Quagsire, and then Metang is going to be hit by Dig, and it nearly takes it down in a single hit. Crunch finishes it off, and that was a pretty easy Snaddle. On the SS Libra, I get the Flamethrower TM and teach it right away over Ember. And oh yeah, Zook has a Carvana. Goodbye, Carvana. At level 37, I learn Earthquake, and right before the next boss fight, I teach Protect. Now going into the battle against Gonzap, he leads with an Electrode and a Nuzleaf. I go for Protect on the first turn, hoping that the Nuzleaf would fake out Sharpedo, but unfortunately it doesn't. I go for Ice Beam and Rock Slide. Unfortunately, Electrode hits a Spark, taking down Sharpedo immediately. Hyper Beam hits Camerupt, getting a crit. Go for Flamethrower, which takes down Electrode, and then out comes Vileplume. And even though I do think that Flamethrower would take down Vileplume, I'm hoping to take down both the Nuzleaf and the Vileplume with the Earthquake to get as much experience as I can. Unfortunately, it survives with just a little bit of HP, so I'm able to take it down this time. Whiscash comes out and gets taken down to red, and a Water Pulse finishes me off. Okay, well now the third attempt, and the only reason it took 3 attempts was because the Nuzleaf kept faking out Camerupt on the first turn. If I can use Earthquake and immediately take down Electrode, Sharpedo is completely safe, and I can just go for Ice Beam to take down Vileplume, or maybe not. Flamethrower takes it down though. Then out comes Whiscash, which can definitely take down the Camerupt pretty easily. So I go for Ice Beam and Flamethrower into it, which takes it down to yellow. It goes for Spark instead though, taking Sharpedo down to 1 HP, which I'm not even holding the Focus Band item. I go for Protect and Earthquake, but Sharpedo gets paralyzed and gets taken down. And then all that's left is the Skarmory, which should go down to just a single Flamethrower. And that's Gonzap. Not too hard, but just need a little bit of luck. Sharpedo, goodbye Sharpedo. At the top of the pyramid, hi Camerupt, goodbye Camerupt. And at level 45, Camerupt learns Eruption, a move that does damage based on your HP. So if I'm at full health, it's 150 base power. Anyway, moving on to the battle against Gorgon, he leads with a Lairon and a Celio. I go for Crunch and Flamethrower into Celio to take it down immediately. And then out comes Slowking, which should just go down to a single Crunch. And I decide to go for Eruption, and such a beautiful animation, and I think it was love at first sight, honestly. It's a beautiful move that I click even in the worst circumstances, because I just like to see it. Anyway, Crunch takes Ursaring down below half, and Flamethrower takes Primeape down. Out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Hypno. Ursaring uses Earthquake, taking Camerupt down to 15 HP. I go for Crunch into Hypno to take it down, and then all that's left is Ursaring, which goes down to a Flamethrower. Easy Gorgon. Now going into the last area of the game, and they're doing very well for themselves. The early game did slow them down just a tad bit, but I think they could still end up with a great time if they can keep up the momentum. Moving on to the battle against Lavrina, she leads with a Gardevoir and a Garbus, and you can see I really wanted to go for Eruption there. I go for Crunch to take down the Gardevoir in a single hit, and Rock Slide to hopefully flinch one of these. Unfortunately, I get attracted by Gorbis. I go for Ice Beam to take down the Roselia, and decide not to learn Swagger. Then out comes Farfetch'd, which is their first Shadow Pokemon. Go for Rock Slide, which does quite a lot to Farfetch'd, but misses Gorbis. Go for another Ice Beam to finish off the Farfetch'd, and then out comes her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Altaria. And Camerupt is immobilized by Love, is taken down very low with Water Pulse, and Ice Beam takes down Altaria in a single hit, and then all that's left is the opposing Gorbis, which takes down Camerupt, but I think Camerupt's done enough stalling that I can take it down with a single Crunch. Moving on, we run into another Sharpedo, goodbye other Sharpedo, and right after we run into another Camerupt, goodbye other Camerupt. At the top of the mountain, we run into Snaddle once again. He leads with a Quagsire and a Matang, and I go for Crunch into the Quagsire and go for Eruption, which takes down Matang in a single hit and takes down Quagsire. Then out comes Scizor and his Shadow Pokemon Solrock, and I go for Crunch into Solrock and another Eruption, because I have a problem. The Eruption takes down Scizor in a single hit, and nearly takes down Castform. Out comes his Shadow Starmie, which is usually the scariest Pokemon he has. Crunch takes it down in a single hit, and Flamethrower finishes off Castform. Okay, well that was pretty easy. Moving on to Ardos, he leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam. And I go for Ice Beam into the Swallow to take it down immediately. And out comes Kingdra. Psychic hits into Camerupt, doing a decent amount of damage. Rock Slide doesn't really do too much to Alakazam. Fruity Pebbles rain down. I go for Crunch into Kingdra, which doesn't quite take it down. And Thunder Punch takes Sharpedo down nearly from full health, and Hydro Pump takes down Camerupt. Okay, well I need to do something different. And now, attempt number 6, Sharpedo now outspeeds the Swallow and can take down the Alakazam. And Swallow started using Shadow Half, which isn't great, but it does put Kingdra into a better range to be taken down. So that is good. Then out comes Heracross, which does one-shot Sharpedo. So I need to take down Kingdra and Heracross immediately. Out comes his Shadow Electabuzz, and I'm able to take down the Heracross in a single Flamethrower. Then out comes Snorlax. Now, I have gotten to Snorlax quite a few times, it's just that Snorlax does a ton of damage and can usually take down both of these Pokemon by the time they get here. Electabuzz goes down to a single Earthquake, Camerupt goes down to the Shadow End, and Snorlax is now in range to be taken down by Crunch. So it took quite a few attempts, but we made it. Moving on to Gorgon, he leads with an Ursaring and a Slowking. And I go for Crunch into Slowking, which does take it down in a single hit. Then out comes Aggron, which should go down to a single Flamethrower. It does. And then out comes Walrein. Now Walrein is a bit of a threat, so I decide to go for Protect and Earthquake, which doesn't quite take down Walrein, but does take down Ursaring. Then out comes Poliwrath. Walrein uses Waterfall, getting a crit and taking Camerupt down in a single hit. Go for Crunch to take down the Walrein, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Mr. Mime. Of course, Poliwrath is just going to set up Shadow Sky, so it's not that dangerous on the first turn. Go for Protect just to stall out some Shadow Skies though, just in case this is a battle where I need to wait till he can use Shadow Sky again. Decide not to learn Agility, and uses Shadow Storm and takes me down in a single hit. Okay, well, I decide to change up strategy just a little bit. I go for Crunch into Walrein, followed by Eruption, which still doesn't take it down in a single hit, but this time it goes for Double Edge, dealing damage to itself and getting hit by Rough Skin to take itself down. Okay, well, that's nice. Out comes Poliwrath once again, Earthquake hits, doing quite a bit of damage to everything. Go for Protect and Earthquake to take down his Pokemon, which Poliwrath actually survives on a sliver of HP, so it's going to set up Shadow Sky. And then I already know I can take down the Mr. Mime in a single Crunch, so as long as I outspeed the Poliwrath, which I know I do, I can easily take him down. So Gorgon, second attempt, but honestly the first one was just a little unlucky with the crit. Moving on to Eldest, he leads with a Shadow Manectric and Ninjask. I go for Protect and Earthquake on the first turn to take down the Manectric, and for some reason it went for Shadow Wind immediately. That's rude. Anyway, out comes Salamence, which is his second Shadow Pokemon. Now I should be able to take this down with a single Ice Beam, but just to make sure, I use Rock Slide as well, and that actually did quite a bit of damage to me. I take down the Salamence in a single hit, Rock Slide takes down Ninjask in a single hit, and out comes the Flygon and Marowak. Now between the two, Marowak is definitely the scarier Pokemon, so I go for Ice Beam and Flamethrower to take it down. And that's because I don't want it to survive on a sliver like it just did, and then use Shadow End to do a ton of damage. So it goes down, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lapras, and Ice Beam into the Flygon to take it down, and Flamethrower to take down the Lapras to half. It uses Shadow Storm because Sharpedo's in range to go down, but this turn it's going to use Shadow Sky, but it won't even get the chance because it goes down. Okay, well, moving on to the battle against the big box legendary, Shadowlugia, and I go for Crunch and Flamethrower into it, which Crunch is doing less than I thought it would. It does about half to me. Go for Flamethrower, which takes it down fairly low, but not quite enough for Crunch to finish it off. Sharpedo goes down, but Flamethrower picks up the KO, and we move on to the battle against Greevil. And as you might expect, being only one Pokemon, I go down pretty quickly. Okay, so now for an actual attempt, I go into it, and I go for Rock Slide and Water Pulse. Water Pulse is only doing a little over half to Moltres, so it is going to be a two-shot. Rock Slide hits, finishing off Moltres though, so that's good to know. Out comes Executor. Rhydon hits a Shadow End, taking Camerupt down in a single hit. I use Water Pulse into the Rhydon to take it down. And then out comes Tauros. Executor hits a Shadow End, doing most of Sharpedo's health, but Crunch will take it down, and then out comes Articuno, and now to see if Tauros sees a KO, which it does, so it uses Shadow Rush. Okay, well, this shouldn't be too hard, and really it isn't. This is now attempt number 7, and Water Pulse still isn't enough to take down Moltres in a single hit, but Rock Slide finishes up and takes it down. And out comes Executor. Now I do need to get some luck from either flinches or a miss from Rhydon. Water Pulse does take down Rhydon in a single hit. Then out comes the Tauros once again. I go for Eruption, which doesn't quite take down Tauros, but does take down Executor. Then out comes Articuno. And now I could go for Eruption, but I want to play it safe and just go for Flamethrower because it is a guaranteed damage. Out comes Zapdos. And Shadow Chill hits, taking down Sharpedo. Go for Flamethrower, which takes Articuno down in a single hit. And then another Flamethrower, which takes Zapdos down below half. And as long as I don't get paralyzed, I win. Okay, definitely a little scary at the end, but not too bad. So anyway, how well did they do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 9 hours, 31 minutes, and 10 seconds at level 58 and 62 respectively, and fainted 21 times throughout the game. So overall, I'd say that was pretty good. I think the only part where they struggle is in the early game when Carvana is extremely frail and goes down in 1 to 2 hits, and where Nummel is just very slow and can't take any type of water damage at all without going down. But where does that actually put them on the tier list? Well, at the top of A tier. I don't think they're quite as good as Jolteon, but they are a step above Umbreon, so a great placement overall. And they have finally dethroned Umbreon, who has been the king of A tier for quite a long time. And I think that the only other downside of these Pokemon is that Nummel doesn't evolve until level 33, and Carvana doesn't evolve until level 30. So some of the mid-game fights are definitely a little harder because of it. But I do think that overall, if you're going to play the game, you may as well pick up these 2 Shadow Pokemon because they do incredible throughout most of the game. Anyway, with that, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. And thank you so much for watching. Bye.